Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Tanks, and boy oh boy, it's been a long time since I've actually done a sit down recording. Today I'm going to be doing an updated version of an old video that I did, and that is talking a little bit about the Battle Pass token tanks, the tanks that you can buy from the Battle Pass with in like the token store. I have all of these tanks available, and just a pre-warning, I'm not going to really talk about the amount of tokens that they cost and whether that makes them worth it or not, because unfortunately I can't actually remember how much each one costs due to the fact that I have them all in my garage and I can't see the token costs. But to me it doesn't really matter too much, because in my opinion, if you're going to get them, you're going to get them. Like, it is what it is. So what I'm going to do for each one of these tanks is, just before I say, the tank will come up on screen and it will have an overall rating written underneath it. From there, I will discuss why I've given it the overall rating. I'll talk a little bit about the tank, and then we'll move on to the next vehicle. I'm going to try and make this video as short as possible. However, this is me. I will probably end up waffling quite a lot, so I do apologise in advance. But hopefully it shouldn't be too bad, and hopefully you will learn a bit about each of the tanks, and hopefully I can help out on deciding which ones you should get, which ones you shouldn't get, or in which order to get them in. If you don't know my channel at all, if you don't know me at all, I do have over 60,000 games of World of Tanks. I own every single tier 10 vehicle. I've played the game for over 10 years, so I'd like to think a lot of this comes from a good place. If I have any personal biases, I will try and address those within the video as well. Like, for example, I'm not a tank destroyer player, so the tank destroyers I will probably have rated a bit lower than if you were a tank destroyer player, you'd probably rate them a bit higher. But I will try and justify for everything. But on that, let's jump into our first vehicle. So, first up, we have the Char Futur 4, and I have given this tank a 9 out of 10 overall. In my opinion, this vehicle is an absolutely amazing tank. It's such a good tank. Quite difficult to get the best out of it. It takes a lot more skill than some of the others to get the best out of. It's got really good mobility, great gun, but it has no armor, which traditionally lends itself to a slightly higher skill cap tank to play. The gun itself is kind of like a weird version of the Batchat's gun. It gets the same shells, so the same damage, the same pen, everything like that. But the autoloader itself, it's a 4-shell autoloader with 4 second-inch clips. So you can't play it like a traditional autoloader where you go around, you burst your full clip out and get out. In the majority of situations, that's not going to work unless someone's just completely ignoring you. You kind of have to put a couple of shots in, fall back, and then be very opportunistic. The gun itself is very, very good, like in terms of gun handling. 1.83 seconds aim time and 0.29 dispersion in my setup. So you can actually use this tank to snipe, which is kind of cool. And it has got good gun handling for, well, pretty much all situations. But yeah, I think it is a great overall tank, but it is a relatively high skill cap tank. However, I would say if you're a good player, I would recommend buying this tank as one of your first vehicles. Call it an Easter egg as well, something I found out not that long ago when I was 3-marking this thing, which I did not that long ago. There are certain skins and camos that actually turn the searchlight on. So, this one, which I think is the Prospector style, I want to say. Yeah, Prospector style. It actually turns the light on. And the Coral Reef style turns the light on, like, really bright. But if you look at all of the rest, the light is off. So, if you have the Coral Reef style or the Prospector style for this tank, just a little added bonus feature that you actually get your searchlight turned on. Which is something I didn't know, but a cool little Easter egg on the Char Futur nonetheless. So next we have the AE Phase 1, another tank that I have 3-marked, so I have quite a lot of experience in this vehicle. Overall, I've given it a 9 out of 10. Again, I promise I'm not giving all of them 9 out of 10, it's just these first two. In my opinion, this is the best all-round tank on this entire list. I think that it's probably the best one for a newer player. It's one of the easiest tanks to play. It's got a really solid gun. The armor is pretty decent, and despite having those two, it's still got pretty good mobility. Obviously, great on ridge lines, 10 degrees gun depression. The hull armor isn't great, but you can hide that. And just use your turret armor and play it around the gun. It's a fairly traditional American gun. You've got 400 alpha. It's the E5's gun pretty much, but just a slightly less DPM version, and I think the gun handling's a little worse, but still by no means bad. You got the really nice 340 heat pen as well. Oh, and I should say, actually, all of these tanks get the standard large repair kit, which is very, very nice. But that's the same for all of them. But yeah, this tank, overall, just such an amazing vehicle. Like, really, really, really good vehicle. Amazing all-rounder, and there's only so many times I can say it's such a good all-rounder. The armor isn't impenetrable, even playing hold down, like high pen heat still will go through the cheeks, and you have got a bit of cupola, but if you learn how to wiggle a little bit, learn how to move forwards and backwards and not stay completely still on a ridge line, get this thing on a ridge line, and it is absolutely amazing. So definitely 9 out of 10, really, really solid tank. Next up on the list, we have the Object 777 version 2. Another tank that I recently 3-marked. I've 3-marked all of the tanks so far. I promise you, I haven't done that to all of them. In fact, I think it's only the first 3 that I have 3-marked. But again, quite a lot of experience in this tank. I've given it a 7 out of 10 overall, which some of you may be thinking, that's a bit high. And I completely agree. If you'd have asked me to rate this tank after the first, like, 10, 20 games, I would have probably said 4 or maybe 5. But having 3-marked this tank and got all the field mods, tuned it to how I think it works best, I actually think it's a really solid all-rounder. Yes, you still have to work around the fact that it's got relatively poor gun depression. The gun handling is pretty horrific. The DPM isn't great. But other than that, the tank is really good. The armor is really lovely, kind of IS-4-esque. You can use the side armor to bait people into shooting your side. You can side scrape really, really well. The mobility is still really decent, considering that it's a pretty big heavy tank, like 15 horsepower per ton and 40 kilometers an hour. I didn't feel the need to put turbo on it. You can then build fully around the gun, as you can see I've done. I did start on this tank, and quite a lot of people build this tank with like HP and turbo. Fairly standard heavy tank build, and I'm not saying that's wrong. But for me personally, building this tank fully into the gun, you can actually make it into a half decent tank, like 3,400 DPM. 2,400 DPM. Aim time and accuracy is still a little poor, but you can definitely work with it, and I do genuinely think this is a kind of underrated tank. I would still probably say that you are better playing the AE Phase 1, but I still think it's a decent tank, and I don't really think you can go too wrong with it. Next up on the list, we have the K91 PT, and I have given this tank a 2 out of 10 overall. Personal bias, I do not like tank destroyers. I think this tank is a very awkward tank destroyer to play as well. I know a lot of people will probably be shouting at me and saying, why the hell have you rated this thing so low? But in my opinion, I just do not like the vehicle. It is a mobile tank, it goes quite quick, and you've got really good DPM, which would make you kind of think, okay, I can play it more up close and personal, play it a bit like a brawling tank. Your issue is with your low HP, and the armor on paper looks really good, but it is only the upper superstructure that has that good armor, and going up against tier 9s and tier 10s, like, they can still pen that, but the hull armor is pretty trash. It kind of means that, yes, sure, you can run around the battlefield and you're really mobile, you can get close to people, but it's a non-turreted tank destroyer, so peeking is always awkward. People take your tracks off. You then try and use your DPM. The pen isn't amazing, and in my opinion, the alpha is way too low for a tier 9 TD. Something like the Ag Tiger's 560 alpha is much, much better. So then you'd think, oh, well, maybe you could play it like a sniper, but again, your accuracy, even with full build accuracy pretty much on this, I'm still only at 0.34, like, it's not that great. And again, that's where the alpha has more issues when you're taking opportunistic sniper shots, only doing 390 with lowish pen, really not that great, like, you're much better off playing something else. I'm sure some people can get this tank to work, I'm sure some people have really good fun in this tank. Personally, I am not one of them, so I would avoid this tank, especially if you're not a TD player. But you know, your mileage may vary, as I said before. But yeah, overall, 2 out of 10. Just not my cup of tea, unfortunately. Not my favourite. Not my favourite tank. Not a good tank, in my opinion. So next one, we have the Kunzer Panzer. Now, this is an interesting tank. This is a kind of weird tank. And to be honest, a lot of the tanks from now on are kind of, they're weird tanks. I do quite enjoy that about the Battle Pass, that they're not like kind of standard tanks. They do have quite a lot of quirks to them. But this tank is a medium tank, a German medium tank that has a siege mode in a medium tank, which is kind of weird to start with. But where it gets weirder is the fact that when you enter the siege mode, your DPM goes down. So you have worse DPM, but you get more accurate, better aim time, and obviously your mobility goes down. You get better gun depression and stuff as well, I believe. But I gave this tank a 6 out of 10. A lot of people will probably give it better, but in my opinion, it loses points because if you compare this thing to the Leopard prototype, which is obviously its like-for-like tech tree counterpart, this tank, when it's in the mobility mode, has worse mobility than the Leopard prototype, and this tank in the siege mode, so when you're using your firepower, is also worse at shooting than the Leopard prototype, and you have the inconvenience of having to switch between the two and having to learn when the best time to switch between the two is. It's still rated 6 out of 10 because I still think overall it's a pretty decent tank. Like, you can use it as a sniper, or if you stay in the mobility mode and kind of use that DPM, and you can circle heavy tanks and tank destroyers and stuff, and it does work decently. Like, it's not 0.5 dispersion and 4 seconds aim time outside of the siege mode. Like, it's still okay. So, it can work, but I think this tank is let down by the fact that I think they could have just made it overall a bit better, not giving it the funky two different modes, and it's just a little bit awkward to play. A good player will still get a decent amount out of it, but I'd probably say 6 out of 10 is around about right for me. It's just, yeah, it's just not quite there in my opinion. So next, we hop back over to France, and we have the Lorraine 50T. Now, this is an interesting vehicle. I've given it a 5 out of 10. I think it's a little bit underrated. I think most people would probably say that this is actually worse. It's an incredibly mobile tank. Like, it goes 60 kilometers an hour base, I think, with a turbo 64, which is absolutely mad. Like, that's insane how fast it is. So you can surprise people by getting into positions early. The issue is that once you're in those positions, it can become a little awkward. It has the good parts. It has 10 degrees gun depression. It's really accurate, so you can use this tank kind of to fall back or push forwards and use the good accuracy and the good mobility in combination to pick people off. Downsides, aim time kind of sucks. DPM really sucks. I think base it's like 1600 or something, which is really, really bad. And only 400 alpha as well, so it's not even like you've got a big alpha punch and then you have to reload for a while, which is kind of sad. Turret armor's okay. Like, it's pretty decent against most standard rounds. It will actually be alright. And in use with the 10 degrees gun depression, you can kind of make that work. Downside, hull armor is absolutely trash, especially sides and rears. Like, sides and rears of this thing is HE-able. Absolutely ginormous tank as well. Like, it's absolutely massive. But yeah, I think it's a little bit underrated. So that's why I'm at a 5 out of 10. I think most people would probably give it a 3 or a 4 out of 10. But I can't really give it any higher, and in my opinion, you're better off, rather than getting this, just get the AE Phase 1. It's a much, 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 much better overall tank that kind of, it trades the mobility. Not that the AE Phase 1 doesn't have good mobility, but it trades the insane mobility that this has for an overall better gun and a bit better armor all round as well, which I think is definitely a trade worth doing. And yeah, I would just say probably get the AE Phase 1, to be perfectly honest with you. Next up, we have the BZ58-2. Now, full disclosure on this, I have not played a huge amount of games in this tank. I think it is less than 10. But in my opinion, I didn't really need many more games to get get what my opinion of this tank is. I think it's a solid all-round tank, but nothing special. That's literally all I've got written down for this tank. Like, I've got some notes, and that's all I've got written down for this thing. It's solid, but nothing special. The gun depression, decent. The gun, decent alpha, decent DPM. Like, that alpha DPM combination is quite nice. Over 2,500 DPM in my setup with 520 alpha. That's pretty good. That's better than things like the E75 and stuff. And it's still got a decent alpha punch. The gun is a little bit derpy. Like, dispersion's not awful, but aim time's not great. The turret armor's decent, but you've got a good big cupolas. The hull armor's alright. Like, you know, it's not going to bounce anything crazy, but it will surprise you here and there, like a really well-angled upper plate, a bit of an angled lower plate. You know, people are going to bounce here and there. Mobility's not awful, but not great. So, yeah, I really struggled to kind of find things to say about this tank. It's a good all-round tank. It's a solid all-round tank, but nothing special. So I think 6 out of 10 is a perfectly good rating for it. Like, I don't really have a lot else more to say. I'd probably say in terms of when you'd buy this thing, probably one of the last tanks you'd buy, unless you want something to train up your Chinese heavy tank crews, so either your BZ-75 crew, your 5A crew, something like that. But yeah, it's a very average tank in my opinion. Now, our penultimate tank, I have given a 10 out of 10, and of course that is for the Cobra. That 10 out of 10 rating is mostly for the memes. Like, this thing is unbelievably fun to play for 4.5 seconds, then really frustrating for 50 seconds. It's a completely broken tank. Like, if you play this thing well, you can just have insane games in it, but then you can get caught on reload, and it's just not fun. The main thing about this tank, 4-shell autoloader, 1.5 second intra clip with 490 alpha with the Hesh makes it the burstiest tank in the game, the best tank, the tank with the most burst damage in the game. Obviously, when you're firing that Hesh, you do have lower pen, so you do have to aim it. It's 210 pen. It does mean, because it's over 200 pen, you can pen every tank in the game, even something like a mouse, but you will have to be behind it or flush side, something like that, to be able to pen those shots. But when you get an opportunity to, this tank is just so funny. Like, the gun handling seems trash, but is actually one of those tanks that it just kind of works on, and it just seems to hit tanks left, right, and center. You've got 10 degrees of gun depression. The armor's not great. The mobility's pretty good. Like, it's just a meme of a tank, to be honest with you. If you can get this thing, a platoon of 3 of them together as well, oh my god, it's so funny. But yeah, it's more of a meme. I'd definitely say it's worth the tokens just to have it as like a meme tank. But you have got to work around that reload. But then the potential to be able to just delete any tank lower tier than it, pretty much, and a lot of tanks same tier, if not some higher tier, like especially TDs, tier 10 TDs, like the Grill you can take out in one clip. It's definitely worth it. It's so funny. I'm sure you could go find compilations of Cobras clipping people online. Like, it is very, very funny. So, 10 out of 10 for the memes. Can't really say a lot else about it. And then last, but maybe least, the KPZ-3PR07HK. The catchiest name of a tank in history. 4 out of 10 I've given this thing. In my opinion, again, personal bias against tank destroyers. Don't particularly like tank destroyers. But again, it's got kind of like a weird siege mode, where it's not like the STRV and it's one is better. One is purely for mobility, one is purely for the gun. When you're in the mobile mode, you have insane DPM. Like, mine is nearly 4,000 DPM. And your accuracy and your aim time aren't that awful. But, yeah, it's alright. But then you switch to the siege mode and you get insane accuracy. I think it's something like 0.25 or something like that. And the aim time is non-existent. And I think you get better gun depression as well. But you lose DPM, which I don't really understand. Really fast in the travel mode, but it has absolutely no armor really to speak of whatsoever. And yeah, It's kind of a bit like an STRV. I would say personally, if you don't like the STRV, you're not going to like this thing. I'm not a huge fan of it. I probably don't play it that amazingly. So again, please do take this with a pinch of salt. Other thing I'd say against the vehicle is the crew. It has the weirdest crew layout. The commander is also a gunner. The driver is also a gunner. And the radio operator is the loader. It doesn't match any other German tank destroyer, and they've got a weird thing at the minute. It's a bit like the T3 Jaeger, which has got a really weird crew. It's like, I haven't got another crew to put in it. So I'm actually using a standalone crew, which is obviously a downside, or you have to use a crew that you're not going to be able to get the best perks and stuff because it's not matched up right, which is definitely a downside to this vehicle. Again, I think if you're a TD player or you have more patience with tank destroyers than me, you'd probably rate it a little bit higher. But for me personally, 4 out of 10, it's just not that amazing, in my opinion. And yeah, that's all she wrote for this video. I've tried to keep it as quick as I can. I do apologise if I didn't. But yeah, there are some great tanks to choose from. I think overall, I'd probably say your best pick for first tank is the A Phase 1. It's one of the cheaper ones as well, as far as I remember. If you're a good player, I would probably say the Char Futur is definitely a standout as well. And if you just want something for the memes, definitely the Cobra is up there. But all of them, they're okay tanks. Like, some of them better than others, as I've just discussed. But hopefully that has helped you guys get some opinion on someone that has played all of them. Kind of giving you my ratings, kind of just a snippet of what each tank is into and whether I think it plays well or not. And yeah, on that, if you have enjoyed the video, guys, please give it a like. I know there are a lot of people usually that end up watching these videos who are new to the channel. So if that is the case and you've got this far, give the channel a subscribe. I'm not going to pretend that I upload often. I don't. But be subscribed for when I do is always nice. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you go check out my Twitch channel as well. I stream over there 3 or 4 times a week. Link should be in the description. You'll find all of my content pretty much over there these days. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.